Good morning, everyone. Sorry for our slight delay. We had a bunch of delegation meetings this morning, and so as they wrapped up around the state delegations, we wanted to make sure we had as many folks as we could who were able to join us. So good morning. It is a pleasure to be here at the end of week 7. We are officially, as of tomorrow, halfway through the 2026 legislative session, which is somewhat hard to believe. I'm incredibly pleased and honored to be joined today by members of our Senate Black Caucus to celebrate Black History Month. Maryland, as many folks know, has the largest legislative Black caucus in the nation. In the Senate, we have 16 members, which is nearly half our entire Democratic caucus. It is truly a remarkable reflection of the true representation of the state of Maryland. A notable feature gives me great pride that the state of Maryland is the most reflective state in the country. In just a moment, I will turn it over to members of our caucus for their remarks on specific issues. I do want to highlight just a few items from the Senate this past week. Most importantly, again, as we said, we are halfway through, and we've already passed through numerous pieces of important legislation. We've completed already 2 bill signings, which is, I believe, the first for the Senate and for the General Assembly as a whole overall. While we've seen incredible chaos at the federal level, we knew coming into this legislative session that we had to respond immediately in tangible ways. This past Tuesday, as we all know, was the deadline for filing for the next elections, and I'm very proud to work with our Democratic caucus as we look forward to having an important election season ahead. In that vein, I'd also like to thank our chair of the Senate Finance Committee, Pam Beidle, who announced that she is retiring. She's certainly been a key member of our leadership team and a great partner in the work. Lastly, I want to mention that later today in the Juvenile Proceedings Committee, and the chair is joining us, we'll be working on the Youth Charging Reform Act. This has been a very important issue that we've been trying to navigate for several years, and we feel good about the progress that's ahead. With that, I want to pause and recognize Senator Hayes, who will kick off for the remarks from our members.
Thank you. Good morning. Senator Antonio Hayes from the 40th Legislative District. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here as we culminate Black History Month. We, as members of the Legislative Black Caucus, acknowledge that we stand on the shoulders of giants before us, whether Senator Blount, Senator Exum, Senator Britton, and so on and so forth, who serve in this illustrious body. We're so thankful to the Senate President who's partnered with us as we attempt to elevate our priorities as a legislative Black caucus and this body, as we've done year after year. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of key issues, a couple of key priorities. You all should have been recipients of the entire legislative Black caucus agenda, which was circulated just, I think, last week or the week before. But we wanted to highlight some of the priorities in this chamber that we hope to advance very soon. And so shortly after my voice, you will hear the voices of 3 of my colleagues, starting with Senator Hinson, who serves as the first vice chair of the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. Senator Smith, Senator Hinson, by the way, will talk about our Black wealth agenda as well. She'll be followed by Senator Smith, who will talk about some of our public safety agenda items, and then we'll hear about our civil rights agenda. One of the things that's a constant theme amongst all of us, we shared a shared goal in prioritizing the budget in this upcoming legislation and protecting from whatever cuts that may be to Medicaid and SNAP, as well as some of our health priorities around sickle disease. And so I now turn the podium over to the first vice chair of the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus, Senator Hinson.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. We understand how critical it is to protect and preserve Black wealth in the Black community. Our Legislative Black Caucus just last night hosted our MBE night, where we bring our minority business enterprise community together and we talk about what opportunities exist at a state level. We know that after there were so many cuts at a federal level with their DBE program, that we saw a tremendous amount of support last night. It was perhaps the most broadly and widely attended MBE night. And what I think it reflects is that the need to preserve Black wealth is something that's certainly top of mind for members here in the Senate and throughout the entire Black caucus. What I'll highlight is just one of those vehicles that we've put together for this legislative session. As Senator Hayes said, the broader agenda goes more broadly into some of those other vehicles and tools. One of the things that we're looking at is the intergenerational transfer of Black wealth. And we know that for all communities, most communities and most families, the greatest asset that people have is their home. So what we've put together is a bill, transfer on death deed. It would put in place a system in Maryland where families could designate a beneficiary that would be the inheritor of that home. We've seen far too often in Black communities where after a loved one dies and the house is then stuck in heirs property, where there's a number of people under the laws of intestate succession who have a claim to that property, but no one gets clear title because of the cumbersome process. So the transfer on death deed would put in place designating a beneficiary, and what we have in the legislation is a form. It's a part of the uniform codes because 33 other states have already adopted this policy. So in the uniform code, it would start with a simple form that people could fill out. We still have protections in place to protect against fraud and all sorts of other things, but what we wanted to do was to make it accessible for people to transfer their greatest asset to the next generation so that we can continue to have that as a building block of preserving and protecting Black wealth. So we're certainly very proud of that. That bill is House Bill number 738, Senate Bill number 651. It had a hearing yesterday in the Judicial Proceedings Committee where we really got to understand the value and the benefit that that's going to be for generations of Black wealth in Maryland. With that being said, I'll turn it over to the chair of that committee, my colleague, Senator Smith.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Senator Harris. As we come to an end of Black History Month, I'm really proud that we have two pieces of legislation that will, I think, correct some of the injustices of the past, and move us forward to a more equitable future. One is a commission designed to investigate and produce a report on the Cheltenham gravesite, or the Potter's Field. Our predecessors in the Maryland General Assembly in the 1850s passed a piece of legislation, and in their wisdom saw that they knew and understood that children should not be in the adult prison system. And they passed legislation to create a separate facility to house children incarcerated. That was a whites-only facility. 40 years later, they passed legislation creating a facility for Black children, and that's where the Cheltenham site is, and that's where that grave site is, more of a Potter's Field than a grave site. Although in their wisdom it was seen as a pretty progressive move to get children out of that adult prison system, the conditions were deplorable. And I think the Afro-American newspaper at the time really chronicled some of those, but we're still uncovering some of the injustices there. We initially thought there were 60 to 70 graves in this Potter's Field. We now know that there are at least more than 230, 280 at the list by some accounts. So this commission is going to dive in and try to understand some of the history, do genealogical research, DNA research, records research, legal research, historical research, and produce a report and a set of recommendations for the General Assembly and the governor to consider on how best to move forward to restore that site, to maintain that site, but also to make sure that that history is taught all throughout the state of Maryland so that we never forget the children who have died there. You know, some of the things that we've uncovered is that the offenses that these children were held for, vagrancy, meaning wandering, poverty. We were just uncovering some of the how our justice system dealt with children with mental health issues. A number of those children were basically housed there because they had mental health issues. So the atrocities that happened, this tragic history, this commission led by the Attorney General is going to give us a real deep dive and an understanding of what happened so that we can move forward and understand that history. That connects directly, in my mind, to another bill that's on the voting list today, which is the youth charging as adults auto charging bill. Maryland, as you all know, there are 33 offenses that are eligible for auto charging, meaning that if you're charged as a child, you're going to go into the adult system. We charge more youth as adult than every other state per capita except for Alabama. And the state is an extreme outlier in terms of a federal requirement for sight and sound separation, meaning that the children that are placed in these adult jails and prisons are housed in close proximity and experience trauma when they're exposed to adults. And the devastating impact that will have on that child and their ability to kind of reintegrate into society is something that I think we can never afford to lose sight of. So the bill that we have before us today on the voting list will curtail that practice. It will help us come into compliance with the federal law. It will produce better public safety outcomes. It'll produce better outcomes for our children. So as we come into the close of Black History Month, I cannot think of a better way to live up to the values of what this month is supposed to be about by understanding and rectifying some of the past injustices and moving forward with legislation that helps us correct those in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague on the Judicial Proceedings Committee, Senator Sidnor.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. I am here to talk about a piece of legislation on our civil rights agenda. I believe since I was last here with the president mentioning the Maryland Voting Rights Act. Fortunately, since we last had an opportunity to present about this bill, the Senate passed it. So the Senate version of the bill is in the House's hands. My cross-file, Delegate Wims, I understand, had a very good hearing. For those of you who, if I just may reiterate, this bill came out of some experience that we had in Baltimore County, where our county council redistricted in a manner that harmed the Black community. I ended up having to be one of a number of plaintiffs who sued the county in federal court, forced them with an injunction to change their maps. And the realization kind of hit me that the federal government was not going to be there to help you, and who would be better to help but the Attorney General. So what the bill does is it gives the Attorney General the authority to bring voting rights cases so that we're not relying on the federal government. It also allows for individual plaintiffs to also sue, and we're talking municipal as well as county governments if they do something to harm to voters. So again, extremely happy. Given the chipping away at the federal level, that now we will no longer have to look to the federal government. We will have our own Voting Rights Act right here in the state of Maryland. And with that, what am I turning it over? I'm gonna step out there.
I guess that concludes our presentation this morning. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I mean, just from your perspective, what do you guys see as the biggest issue impacting Black Marylanders right now?
Well, the Legislative Black Caucus has identified a number of priorities, and we kind of categorize those. We look at the areas of Black wealth, we look at public safety, we look at education, we also look at the economics of Black families and the opportunities here in Maryland. When we talk amongst ourselves as a caucus, I have to say, though, the youth auto charging is one of the bills that constantly comes up with the members. If you're speaking to members of the caucus, there is a deep desire amongst many of the members to make sure that youth in our juvenile system are recognized as the children that they are and treated as such and met with services and opportunities rather than just punitive measures from the beginning.
And could I add to that? A report just came out from the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, which is America's Black think tank. They said the Black unemployment in this country now is twice that of white Americans. Black unemployment increased from 6.2% in January of last year to 7.5%. For white Americans, it's 3.5%. And this study from the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies says that the Trump administration policies are causing this decimation, including a large amount of educated Black women who are the primary breadwinners for their homes being laid off. And in my district in Charles County, I see that every day. And that's a big issue. It's a new issue. This report just came out this week. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I have two quick ones. There's an individual who is not standing there who would be there. Who's affectionately called the Dean. That's Senator Joanne C. Benson. Does anyone want to give any thoughts about her in terms of her not seeking re-election? Senator Washington being up, Prince George's, please.
Sure, yeah, thank you. For the record, Senator Alonzo Washington here to speak in favor of our great senator who was once a delegate. But before that, she was actually my principal in elementary school at John H. Bain Elementary School, and when I was in the 2nd grade. And she was a great woman, great leader, and still is. And every day we miss her here and wish her well. So in Prince George's County, and here in the Black Caucus, she is the dean, but she'll forever be my principal. Thank you.
Senator Washington, we want to speak, she would certainly be talking about education issues.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, of course. Speaking of which, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. It's a serious issue that, the foundation of so many Black families here in the state of Maryland is education. And right now, Senator Benson always talked about early childhood education. Right now, Black families and families alike pay about $25,000 or more a year on early childhood education, on childcare. That's the top and #1 issue, and for many parents here, like myself and Senator Hayes, we see that every day. And right now, we got to make sure that we remove the cap of the subsidies for the scholarships for early childhood education, and we got to make sure that we make it accessible for our families too. So education is a big issue here in the state of Maryland. Joanne Benson would be proud to be talking about that today and how it impacts our young people, and how if we're talking about closing the achievement gap amongst Black children and white children, it's going to start at early childhood education. So thank you.
That's just got a quick follow-up, quick question. Thank you. Anyone can jump in as well. What do you say for some African-American constituents in your districts to pay attention to what's going on with the immigration enforcement going on by the Trump administration? The reason why I ask is because many folks are following it and seeing it as just it's affecting those from Spanish-speaking countries. I know that's why I brought it up. But anyone can answer why African-Americans should care.
So, as an immigrant from Jamaica, I take it personal. They say, Annapolis shouldn't take anything personal. But, it's affecting all members of the community. We see in Minneapolis, the Trump administration went after Somalis, right? Somalians in the Minneapolis area and targeted them intentionally. And in addition to our Latino brothers and sisters, right? And so they're going in, the promise was to go after the criminals, right? And the people with danger. But now they're going into workplaces, they're going into schools, they're going into, houses of worship, and going after folks. And I want to remind you that the Democrats in Congress, there's a government shutdown still going on with the Department of Homeland Security, and there are issues going there. And our colleagues in Congress are trying to basically put a rein on ICE. But it's a decimation to the entire immigrant community, folks who are here, both documented and undocumented. Even a lot of individuals here who leave the country with green cards. They're not letting them back in to the country. They're like, you don't have to come back in, even though they're legal residents. They're saying, oh, they're turning them back at the border. And so the word is a lot of immigrants cannot go back home to their mother's or father's funeral, to weddings, because they know there's a great chance, especially from the Black and brown countries, that they will not get back into the country, even with a green card.
No, good question. I think as we talk about the Legislative Black Caucus priorities here today, although that's not a priority to caucus, I think as you see the votes on the bills that were before us that reflect issues around immigration, you will see across the board there's a huge amount of support from the members here. Are there any other questions that relates to our priorities this session?
I have a question about the youth charging. I know we've had many conversations about this, Senator Smith, but when it comes to resources and services that are provided to young people within DJS, state's attorneys continue to say that there just simply aren't enough, and the bed space isn't there. So why would the General Assembly put more kids into this system? I know that there's been some conversations about changes within the bill. Can you just give us an update on what actually will be coming out of the committee later this evening or this afternoon? And what do you say to state's attorneys who say this is going to make their communities less safe?
Sure, we've had a lot of conversations with the state's attorneys, and the most recent stint of conversations actually were very productive. So I want to thank them for coming to the table and offering their ideas. The bill that we are going to pass out of committee later today is largely overlaps with the work that DJS is already getting, meaning that 80 to 85% of the cases that start off in the adult system either get dismissed or are transferred back down to the juvenile system. So they're already ingesting that work anyway. They're already doing this workload. We're just wasting a bunch of time and money by sending them to the adult system first automatically. You're spending about $1,500 a day, $150,000 per child. That kid could lay in that cell for 3 months to 2 years without services, without education. What we're doing is we're putting that workload back into the juvenile system, or at least having a judge decide after balancing and weighing all the factors. And if they go to the juvenile system, they'll get services, they'll get education, we're gonna save money. They're already gonna be there anyway. So I don't understand that line of argumentation because it's just, they're getting that workload anyway. So that's why the bill is before us in the fashion that it's in.
But are they getting the services and programming that they're supposed to be getting? Because they argue that these kids are just sitting there waiting for these programs to begin, and the bed space isn't there. The programs don't have the available space for them right now.
No, so no one will sit here and tell you that the services are adequate or that we're operating optimally. That's true. But this is happening right now anyway, except we're wasting a lot of time and they're getting no services and no education in the adult system. So we are going to rechannel those resources and those savings into further building out services and treatment options. So it's just a more efficient way to do it. It's going to have better public safety outcomes, better outcomes from the youth.
And last question over here.
Hi, thank you. Actually, I have a question for Senator Ferguson. So this
Is it for the caucus? We don't want to hold him here.
This is for him.
Okay.
No more questions of the call. Thank you so very much. He'll stay for you.
Oh, sorry, I got here.
No problem.
Senator Smith, this has been a long time for the auto charging. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on, why it was so tough to get this passed, and I think it's at least 5 years.
I think some iteration has been around for 14 years. So it's been a really long time. Yeah.
That this will finally get it out of JPR.
I think it's great that it's happening on the last 2 days of Black History Month as we close it out, but I think it's been the product of a lot of work, a lot of reform within the juvenile system, a lot of trust in this administration and this secretary and the changes that she has made, and a lot of the work that the General Assembly has done over the past decade to make sure that our juvenile justice system is functioning optimally.
What charges will be going to the judge for the decision?
I have a list of charges that I will make public, but we have curtailed that from the initial 11 that came in the bill, so it's down to around 7. But I'll produce the list later on this afternoon.
Thank you, Senators.
Thank you.
You're good.
Yes, please.
Hello. Hi. It wouldn't be one of these if we didn't ask about redistricting. The governor's office has hinted there's some sort of plan B coming. Have you been approached? Are you open to discussions about a 2028 or later congressional redistricting?
I've not heard anything about a Plan B. I'm not aware of any. I don't know what it is and not aware of it. I think what you just heard are a number of issues that members are focused on this session, really diving in deeply to make sure we can respond to this important moment where people are feeling very scared about the federal government. And I think that's for the next 45 days, that's gonna be our focus are these issues.
It seems like the body has departed from considering congressional redistricting. Is that true to say?
I don't think anything's changed since we started session.
Is it dead yet?
I think we're focused on the things that matter and that we know that we can do to respond to the Trump administration at a time when things are being ripped apart in Maryland. We are putting in place the protections and the wall to protect Marylanders the best we can, and that's what we're gonna keep doing.
So is it dead or is it like Miracle Max dead?
It's for others to describe. I don't think anything's changed since the beginning of session.
If it's dead this year, what about next year?
I'm looking forward to getting through the next 45 days and making sure that we focus on the issues that we know Marylanders are asking us to deal with: affordability, making sure that we can grow our economy and responding to the Trump administration.
Mr. President, to the
Transportation Secretary meet with the city delegation, and tell us a little bit about that?
We've not had a meeting yet. We are trying to schedule it, and hopefully it will be in the next week or so. We look forward to that follow-up. This is a really important conversation. If we look at yesterday, there was news of the Renaissance Hotel, one of our marquee venues in downtown that is now going up for auction. This sadly is about the 5th or 6th large property in the heart of downtown that has gone up for auction, and we've seen substantial write-downs in the valuation of these properties. What we know is that there is not a city on the globe that has a struggling or drowning downtown and a thriving uptown. I would say there's also not a state in the country or a state in any other country in which the largest city is struggling and the state is prospering. And so that is why it is so absolutely critically important that we have a clear vision and plan for how we can reinvest and reinvigorate downtown Baltimore. It's why this conversation about mobility matters so much, because in every thriving city, you see a thriving mobility sector. People can get to where they want to go. They are going to events that they want to participate in. They're visiting cultural institutions from all of the surrounding counties. We've known for decades that the east-west corridor and that the transportation options in the city are simply insufficient. They do not help to promote a world-class city. And so if we are going to turn the corner, and there are lots of glimmers of hope where there are real success stories happening downtown, we cannot turn the corner without an investment in transportation. And so that's why it's so important right now that this transportation secretary present the Baltimore region with a real vision about what type of investments over the next 4 to 8 years will really help to spur economic development.
Mr. President, we are at the midpoint now, and the Senate has yet to advance anything on energy. I know something is coalescing, but can you talk about a little bit of kind of what the vision is right now and how quickly you think something can coalesce as we get closer to crossover? Is this going to be kind of a crossover kind of deal?
Well, I would say there are things related to energy that are already bills that have been submitted, and so those hearings have started. There are a lot of different ideas about how to impact this problem. The challenge, as we all know, is that energy markets are complex. Everybody wants a quick, easy solution. And the reality is there is no quick and easy solution. We need to hold our utilities more accountable. We need to make sure that they are not fleecing ratepayers in any way. We have to find ways to give money back where we can to provide rate relief that does not totally withdraw commitments that we're making towards the future. And we've got to find ways to generate more energy, particularly cleaner and cheaper energy. And so we are trying to compile a number of different strategies that will come together, I think, in the next week or so, at least from the Senate's perspective. I have no doubt that that will lead to further engagement with the administration and with the House. The ideas that we need are not exclusive to the Senate. We know that this issue is so important that we are taking ideas from anywhere to try to put together a rational and realistic package to provide the relief that we know Marylanders so sorely deserve.
Mr. President, so earlier this morning, the governor, Comptroller Learman, and Treasurer Davis sent a letter to the Trump administration essentially asking for $4 billion back in tariffs that Maryland paid. And I'm curious how concerned you are about this sort of escalating the feud between the governor and the president and the effects this could have on Maryland. And secondly, do you think that the governor should take a less combative approach with the president, kind of like Zoran Mamdani's been doing? Because at least on Mamdani's part, it seems like him sort of trying to work with the president and being more calmer has been able to let the president make policy decisions that he otherwise wouldn't make.
Let me start with the first question. On the first question, I would say what this president said that he would focus on is lowering costs for everyday Americans. What we've actually seen a year and a half in is increased costs in almost every sector of life. One of the most tangible reasons for that is because of tariffs that inherently raise the price of goods and services here in the United States for Americans and here in Maryland. We know to the tune of $4 billion, that is $4 billion that Marylanders have spent unnecessarily because of an unconstitutional, unlawful tariff regime. That is unacceptable. And so I am proud that our state leaders have stood up to say Marylanders cannot continue with these unlawful increased prices that are totally the result of a policy that was not thought through and was not tangibly related to the actual law. And so I am very proud of our state leaders who are standing up and doing whatever it takes to find any mechanism possible, legally or otherwise, to return those dollars back to Marylanders' pocketbooks. Secondarily, I would say, you know, I don't see the governor actively taking steps to promote hostility. What I see the governor doing is standing up and responding to, in many cases, unbelievable comments coming out of the President of the United States' mouth. And so I stand with him and behind him when he is defending Marylanders against unjust attacks and unlawful insinuations, in some cases racist tropes. We can't just sit by and be complacent with that. I think the governor has a duty, and he has stood to that duty, to fight for Marylanders and to say, we'll work with anyone if it's in Marylanders' best interest, but when Marylanders are being attacked, we stand to protect them. And so I'm proud to say that I think that he is not the one that is initiating these engagements.
So separately, I understand that there are many members of your caucus who are frustrated by how the redistricting issue was handled, in terms of how the governor would go to national outlets and keep pushing this issue when clearly the Senate is, not willing to give him the win that he wants. And so I'm curious about what the relationship between the governor and the Senate is currently, and whether, these frustrations have subsided or if they're still simmering.
I know it is often tempting to frame these in win or loss frames. No, this is not about winning or losing. This is about public servants who have a bona fide disagreement about how best to protect Marylanders, but at the end of the day are in full agreement about the importance of this moment and that we have many places where we have to continue working. I would say we are as strong as ever in doing what it takes across the board on issues from protecting downtown, from protecting Marylanders against unlawful ICE enforcement, from making sure that we can lower costs and lower energy prices, from a federal administration and a president who has cut out energy markets and made energy more expensive. We will stand arm in arm linked together. When we disagree on a specific issue, that's democracy. And so what I know is from members of the Senate, we're going to keep working together and we're going to keep pushing, because at the end of the day, we're here to protect Marylanders, and that's our job.
Mr. President, I want to ask about Baltimore City. The Inspector General is suing City Hall over access to documents when it comes to her investigations. And now there's legislation that's been introduced in both the House and the Senate in a bipartisan fashion to make it clear that inspectors general across the state should be exempt from the MPIA so that their investigations can move forward. Is that something that you support? And do you see any concerns with how City Hall is handling documents and even taxpayer spending, given the latest report?
Yeah, and I would say I know a lot of attention has been on the city. This issue appears to be a statewide issue based on the role of inspector generals in counties across the state and the MPIA. I think there's a very important conversation that we are going to try to have this session. I'm not sure that we will be able to fully get to the conclusion, and may have to do something over the interim to really look at what is the appropriate level of access for inspector generals that's default access versus protected information that is available through subpoena or through request. What we know is that all local governments handle very, very, very sensitive data. And so there are situations, be it with a negotiation or proprietary information or settlement negotiations, that we are protecting on an everyday basis. And it is very important, and in fact, government can be liable if that data gets released inappropriately. Obviously, we want our inspector generals to be making sure that dollars are spent effectively and efficiently, and we want to make sure that they have the appropriate powers. And so there is a line between total access to all information and no access that's only on request. And I think we're trying to figure out what is the in-between and the appropriate policy construct that inspector generals have some information by default and then others that is provided with good cause.
The entire inspectors general across the state, though, all of them sent us letters saying that this is hindering their investigations. If they all say that this is a problem, why wouldn't the General Assembly listen to them?
I think we do want to act, and we do want to clarify where there is disagreement. It's, I think that there is a broader question, given the scope of data that is maintained in all jurisdictions, that we want, it's not going to end up in a blanket rule for all data. I think there's going to be a tiered level of access. That's what makes the most sense to me, and what I hear from members is to develop a plan that's based on information, looking at best practices across the country. And so we're going to try to get that done in the next 45 days. If we don't, we will have a standard that we would probably sunset so that we have time to really look at best practices across the country and come back next year for a full process.
Mr. President,
Yeah, sorry. Oh, on the floor. Okay, yes. Thank you all. Have a great day.